Hello my friends, I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to more CSGO news. I hope you guys all enjoy as per usual. Let's hop into our first story, why don't we? Because it is now officially the biggest story I've talked about, I think, in CSGO news over the past month or so, and that's all around Boombl4 now officially joining Navi. I know I've had 2 videos on this, so if you guys want to skip forward a couple of minutes, I would not blame you at all, but Boombl4 is now officially replacing Edward on that roster. But let me first say, Edward now serving over 3,300 days on the Navi banner, or under the Navi banner, I should say. It's an immense farewell. Of course, many people out there are going to have mixed opinions about whether or not he should have been replaced a while ago, but nonetheless, with him spending so much time under a single organization, it is not a lighthearted goodbye we do say here, but definitely an exciting one for sure, because he will be not ending his career as of right now for Counter-Strike. He'll be on loan till the end of this year, going back to Winstrike, where Boombl4 is coming from. And again, I just can't really express how happy I am about this. And obviously, I'm very biased. I've showed you guys how much I've really cared for Boombl4 over the past couple of years, ever since his days with Boombl4 Fire, then of course to Winstrike. He has been a carry for that roster for quite some time, and obviously when it comes time to thinking about this trade, as of right now, we have no idea what the role swap will be for Navi. Of course, many of us assume it will be Zeus continuing his IGL reign until he does retire sometime this year, as expected. Will he usher Boombl4 into the IGL role when he leaves is the ultimate big question. Now, also with that being said, I must touch note on as well, this could be a benefit to both teams, although when people say that, I highly do doubt that, because I really do see Boombl4 as the overall carry for that Winstrike roster. Can I see Edward downgrading to another CIS team below Navi and performing out of his mind? No, I cannot see it. Could it happen? Certainly could, but I really am excited to see what Boombl4 can do on this roster and how being around a brand new, better team. I think none of us are going to disagree that Navi is a far better lineup than Winstrike is. The players that Boombl4 is now surrounded with are so much extremely better. I am excited to see how he can actually grow with this roster. Now, also, a couple last things for all of you guys. In their post, they did call this the most expensive transaction in CS history, or however the wording was. Just to clarify, thanks to Cybersport, it's the most expensive transaction in Russian CS history. So just to clarify that, he was not that expensive. I'm sure a couple $100,000, whatever you want to range it as, but he certainly was not the most expensive in all of Counter-Strike. But with that being said as well, it didn't really stop Zeus in his latest vlog from making constant jokes about Boombl4's weight already. So I hope they are joking, which I'm sure they are, but Zeus, if you're going to have a problem with my man Boombl4 this early on, you're going to have a problem with me. But also, I would say even more surprising, because we knew the Boombl4 trade was going to happen. It was pretty much 99% confirmed. Even more surprising, though, and I'm super curious what you FaZe fans think about this, that is actually Guardian announcing he will not be retiring seemingly anytime soon. Actually came out with an interview, I'll link down below for all of you guys, and said he has at least 3 majors left. And to me, this came as a huge surprise. Obviously, most recently acquiring Neo to that roster, and they have not been stunning whatsoever. I think a lot of us can agree we're really questioning where this roster wants to go in the future, and that first pickup as well with Neo was still a very shocking one. This announcement, though, if you guys remember back to the Boston Major with that Cloud9 loss, losing to Cloud9, I should say, in the finals there, he was set to retire then and there if they would have won that major, and now all of a sudden, a couple majors later, he is now saying he has at least 3 more. It's very surprising to see a guy back in 2018 who was ready, set, and done with CS to now potentially actually last up until 2020 or 2021. And with that being said, I'm not going to lie to you guys, recently he's not been performing the greatest, as well as the entire lineup themselves. And so I do not take this very lightly, and I'm super curious what you guys think about the future of this FaZe Clan roster, what exactly direction-wise they are going in. And with that being said as well, I think Decay had a great article. I will link down below for all of you guys. I will not touch on this in great detail as well, but with that being said, he touches on the fact that FaZe financially has been very invested in CSGO, and results-wise, we really have never seen too much from them in terms of, is it worth it? Because we have always known FaZe Clan as the team who is willing to spend as much money as possible to get the roster they want. Heck, when they joined the CSGO scene, rumor has it a couple $1 million is what it took them to acquire the initial roster, who did utterly nothing. I made a video about this many years ago when it first happened. That roster was so financially unsuccessful, it's kind of hard to imagine spending that much money in this year's terms and not having a top team. And that being said, of course, you lose Kerrigan, one of the best IGLs in the world. To be fair, the team had stalemated. It seemed they pretty willingly wanted wanted him to go, and of course you eventually bring in Neo, but before then you bounce around the IGL role. Eventually it lands on Nico, your star fragger. He passes it on to, of course, Neo, who is in himself a very controversial pickup right before the major. What they've been doing financially, of course, ever since their start has been so much more restricted, and it seems like a FaZe Clan who was once so eager to spend the money to acquire players is now trying to almost hang on or acquire, I guess you could say, cheaper pickups to try and fill the gaps or fill the holes they're certainly missing. And so for me, I totally agree with the K on the future of this roster right now. We have no idea. Yes, they will always be in the top 15, a top 10 team range because their roster is that powerful, but are they still willing to make the financial backing, the financial move to acquire the players to push them one step forward is the giant question left unanswered. But as of right now, Guardian is not set to retire anytime soon, which is a huge awakening and a very huge surprise for me. And this next one, boys, this one is going to be interesting. I'm super curious what you guys think about this one. This is actually a story all around Optic India 4, remember that being Marzel and his contradictory actions when it comes to the lack of rule set, especially when it comes to the Indian region. We have seen this several times now. I was initially going to have a dedicated video about this, but now I would just throw into a CSGO news episode because it's very interesting, and I'm super curious what you guys think about this, especially when a CSGO pro player abuses the rule set in one case and then complains about other teams abusing the rule set in a different case. It's very, very interesting things, and again, when it comes to the Indian scene, we have seen a very, very much lack of rule set, a lot of chaos over there ever since that Optic India story did break. But it starts off with our boy Marzel in a Facebook post. I will show you guys on screen. Whoa! Yeah, you see it. Yeah, whenever you start off a statement with screw, you better choose your words very wisely afterwards. He has an onslaught, not only on Val, but of course on the Faceit servers. If you guys did not know, throughout apparently the minor qualifiers, you can actually veto servers. It's in the rule set, and you would argue, of course, it does make sense why that should be the case, but apparently it can be abused very easily because Team Signify, that's Marzel's team, the team they were playing against, apparently vetoed the server they had better ping on because they would rather play with both teams having higher ping. It makes logical sense, right, for a team, because in that instance, it was actually Marzel's team who still had the ping advantage. Let's say they had 20 ping, the team they were playing had 50 ping. They vetoed that server, and therefore both teams had to play on 200 plus ping, let's say is the case. Now, Marzel was complaining about this, and I would say rightfully so, right? There should be some sort of clause in there. If both teams get marginally better ping on a certain server, you probably should be choosing that server as opposed to opting where both teams can play on a server where it's just ridiculous ping. It does make sense, and I get his argument there of why he'd be upset. His team did actually go on to win the match itself, but it could be abused in the future, and all of a sudden you have a team who is playing all these teams on 200, 300 ping. They make the minor, and they actually have to play on actual LAN ping. You can see where that would be an issue. But with all that being said, okay, you kind of see both sides of that, and again, you see Marzel complaining about that rule set being abused, but then you take it to an ESL India Summer Masters series where he then also, I believe, these are just allegations, but it seems pretty clear, he also abused the rule set in place. Now, this is where the lack of rules does come into place. A guy named Ankit actually sent me this story many weeks ago. I apologize to you for taking so long to cover this, where it was actually a Masters series where Marzel not played for one team, he actually played for two different teams during a same tournament, which of course, as you guys can imagine, is incredibly, incredibly abusive if that is abiding by the rules. It actually did, according to that rule book, break the rules, but according to the source who sent me this story, there was some sort of reach around in this rule set. There was a rule set to be abused, and Marzel was one of the many players potentially who did abuse that rule set because he did, as you guys can see on screen, play for two separate teams, one being Team Wings and one being his very own team, Team Signify. So apparently, according to the rule book, if you actually register with one team, you cannot play for a second team, which does make sense, but I think the source who sent me this also said there was a reach around. If you do not register with either team you were playing with, you could technically play with multiple teams. So if your name was not registered whatsoever, you could play for any team you wanted to, and that's potentially why Marzel was able to actually play for two of those teams. So it just makes it very curious as to why you'd be afraid or be angry at some teams abusing a veto rule in a separate rule set, which was actually abiding by the rules, but you yourself are willing to break what seems morally incorrect to do in another tournament and actually play for two separate teams, which is equally should be against the rules. So kind of hypocritical in my sense. Two very different stories as well, but both which go to show you is kind of just the lack of rulings over there, especially when it comes to minor qualifiers. We have seen many complaints so far about these server issues, and especially when it comes to ESL events in India, we have seen rule sets being abused heavily, where even individual players can play for multiple teams. The chaos over there, it's also very hard to follow because there's very few sources. So if anyone wants to reach out to me for clarification, I would love to share the kind of a elaboration on those two stories. But either way, it's kind of amazing to see a CSGO professional player being so hypocritical when it comes to abusing rule sets. And very last thing, CSGO news for all of you, just some great news out there as well, brought to us by Scott Smith, who's now financially aided a team out there owned by Team Denial, which you guys certainly know has had their issues financially both in the past and in the present. I've touched on this story many times on this channel. If you guys do not know, there have been several accusations across several esports under this umbrella, that being Denial, of not paying their players or just kind of fumbling around the issue of payment as well. So now it's actually Scott Smith stepping in to aid these guys and their boot camp for the South American minor qualifier, the closed qualifier for their minor. The team's on screen for all of you guys. As you see, Denial made it in through a last chance qualifier as well. And if you guys were curious, it's actually formerly Team Jaguar. They were signed by Denial. They're actually an ESL Pro League team for South America as well. So they will compete against all of those teams, and the top two will actually make the American minor. So that's just pretty crazy. Thanks to Scott Smith, because they were very unlikely to be financially backed by their organization to boot camp in Brazil before the minor qualifier. Thanks to Scott Smith, they get that opportunity. And if you guys see all the tweets as well from the team members, it's just amazing to see how thankful they were. And so huge thanks to Scott Smith as well, stepping in financially when these guys probably had no financial backing whatsoever besides whatever small salary they are given. And now they're given some extra chance of hope to actually qualifying with this boot camp being financially aided by Scott Smith himself. It was a really touching story to see. Really great to see people out there in the esports scene contributing to teams in need. You guys can be honest with me. This is the end of the CSGO News episode. I just have a question for you. Was this a rough episode of CSGO News? Because for me, I really struggled getting through it. It actually took me a lot of takes to get through those stories for all of you. I'll be back tomorrow, hopefully more CSGO News, and of course coming Monday as well, breaking down tournament results for all of you guys, and all of next week breaking down extra CSGO and esports news. But you guys can be honest with me. Was that a rough episode? Because it definitely wasn't my best one. I've been really struggling over here with my pronunciation and my language. I don't know if my mouth is getting tired already, but yeah. Anyways, I hope you guys all enjoyed. Thank you all for the likes and the comments and the growth as of lately. If you guys are not aware, we are actually slowly approaching 30,000 subscribers, and that's just insane to think about. So I know this episode might have been a bit of a struggle, but I cannot thank you guys enough for being here every single day. It really does mean a lot to me. So as always, I'll see you guys back here next time with more breaking CSGO news. And one last time, Boomich, I love you.